Millions of genetically modified mosquitoes could be released in Florida, basically to stop two very painful viral diseases. So I'm going to do a little reading here because I want to get the science right. Because as I said, I got two bright people with me. The dengue, am I right?
Dengue.
Dengue and the chikungunya.
Yes, chikungunya.
Chikungunya viral diseases. Okay, pretty good so far. Are growing threats in the U.S. and with global warming, with climate change, spreading tropical diseases farther from the equator, storm winds, cargo ships, and humans carry these viruses to southern cities in the U.S. like the Florida Keys. So there's been an explosion of this in Florida. Right now, there are no vaccines or cures for either of these two diseases, and many more people now are basically afraid of being bitten by a GMO organism, because then that could start a whole other set of problems. Anyway, so more than 130,000 people have signed a Change.org petition trying to stop these GMO mosquitoes from being released. Yeah, we're good? Okay, I'm feeling pretty good about this. Anyway, the head of the Florida Medical Entomology Laboratory had this to say. I think the science is fine. They definitely can kill mosquitoes, but the GMO issue still sticks as something of a thorny issue for the general public. I'm on their side and their consequences are highly unlikely. But to say there's no genetically modified DNA that might get into a human, that's kind of a gray matter.
Yeah,
okay,
gray matter.
So as you can tell by my lead into this is not my department. So I want, Cara, can you clean up this a little bit? Because there's a couple issues here. There's general fear of diseases. There's GMO stuff.
Yeah, there's fear of disease. There's fear of genetically modified organisms. And I think that the link between the two we need to make sure is clear. So the reason that these GM mosquitoes that have been developed in a UK lab and have been successfully deployed, I think, in Brazil, and I think in one other area in South America or Central America, and actually did reduce the population. The way it works is that these genetically modified mosquitoes have been modified to contain some sort of protein, some sort of coding region in their DNA that allows them to successfully mate with disease-carrying mosquitoes, or just any mosquitoes of the species that they're trying to target, and produce offspring that's not viable. So basically, it kills off the population because these modified mosquitoes can't persist. So the idea is we can't kill billions of mosquitoes, right? But what we can do is release mosquitoes that through reproduction will end up dramatically reducing the population of disease-carrying mosquitoes. So this to me is a question of, again, kind of first world privilege. We've talked about GMOs a lot before, and I obviously have been very kind of outspoken about being pro-GMO. And one example that I would use is that there was a rice that was developed called golden rice. And golden rice was developed in an effort to provide nutrition that wasn't present in certain parts of the world. And Greenpeace, because of their fear of GM technology, successfully stopped golden rice from being delivered. And it has been estimated that literally millions, multiple millions of people lives could have been saved if golden rice had been released. And I worry that this is the same kind of a situation where, because people don't understand the science, they're willing to cock-block something that could prevent a lot of people from suffering really debilitating illnesses.
Right, okay, so you did a much better job of cleaning that up than the way I presented it. So there's sort of two things happening here. One, the GMOs in general, people fear sort of irrationally. Almost everything we eat is genetically modified, right? Our bananas, aren't there no such thing as regular bananas anymore?
70 and 90% of the foods on your grocery store shelves, if you're not shopping at a place that specifically caters towards that, has some ingredient that's genetically modified.
And that doesn't mean that it's killing you or doing anything bad.
There's literally no evidence out there at all that it has any negative effects on health or human safety. The only concerns that most people, the only legitimate concerns about GM technology are crop concerns. They're concerns about spreading crops and taking over other fields. And when you develop something that's a crop that's drought resistant and that is really hardy, yes, it might not die if and when you try to kill it.
Right. So okay. So then that gets me to my next question, which is, I think most people have this conflation between GMOs and Monsanto. And Monsanto has strange business practices related to the crops and what people can use season after season and things. So
Right.
I'm not even asking you a question there, but I feel like you got something
No,
for me.
no. I mean, I feel like it's very necessary to parse those two out.
Yeah.
I think that, like, in the hands of a company like Monsanto that seeks only a profit motive, I mean, it's dangerous. But I love the golden rice analogy. There's another really recent one that I love. So in Uganda, children are deficient in vitamin A, and it's got a real, stunting problem with the growth of children. A lot of them are, experience vision problems because they're so deficient in vitamin A. And so you mentioned bananas. They're now trying to, or they're able to actually modify bananas so they're a lot higher in vitamin A to prevent these sorts of, this malnourishment in Uganda. And it's amazing. And I think that the minute we start vilifying, in the broad sense, genetically modifying organisms, I think it's super dangerous.
Right.
And going back to mosquitoes, like, the males that they're talking about modifying aren't even the ones that bite, right?
Yeah, the modified mosquitoes are the non-biting mosquitoes. They're just worried that a handful of females might make it into the crop and that a handful of those female mosquitoes might bite you. But why do I give a shit if a genetically modified mosquito bites me that maybe contains like a handful of proteins that prevent it from being able to make viable offspring? I would be much more concerned about getting bitten by a mosquito carrying chikungunya.
Right. Wow, you said that well, with total confidence too. So, so try to help me understand this. So the people that don't like GMOs, in this case, what they would argue, I guess, is that we're going to create a super strain of mosquitoes that eventually we won't be able to control.
Yeah, I mean, they're literally.
That's what their argument would be.
I don't think that they can articulate what they're afraid would happen. I don't think that there is a valid scientific argument for what would happen. I think it is that kind of, well, we don't know because we haven't tested it and it could have some sort of runaway consequence that we can't foresee in the future.
Right.
And I get that.
But isn't that with all science?
Yes,
Isn't that you
like
could
we need
argue?
to use caution when we think about that. And yes, you can look historically at drugs that were developed that people took that then caused really big problems and had to be taken off the market because we didn't do enough testing. I totally understand that concern. But at the same time, would you throw the baby out with the bathwater?
No.
Would you never take another pill again?
Right, and that's the irony of these people that believe in science half the time and then don't believe it the other half.
It's what we were saying before. It's like people are just afraid of what they don't understand.
Yeah, so is this just one of those issues? I mean, again, the way I presented this thing up top, I don't really get all of this stuff, but I'm trying to do stuff like this just so that people that have a few minutes can get a little bit of something on this. But is this just one of the things where people just won't take the time to learn about, so that's why it's never discussed? Like, that's why this is the type of story that doesn't make it to CNN or to Fox or whatever, because there's just like a lot of big words and you have to think about it for a second, so people just don't talk about it.
Yeah, and I think that people's opinions are easily swayed by clickbait headlines too. I don't think that those help the cause. But yeah, I mean, I think people need to, this is like our world, and it's rapidly changing now more so than ever before. And people need to take the time to read up.
And I think what you said is an important point because we in the media have to take responsibility for this problem too. I mean, if we are the ones presenting these stories, just like the article that we read leading up to this segment, a lot of the headlines are going to be like, GMO mosquito, millions of GMO could be released in your neighborhood. Danger, danger. And it's like, well, if that's how we present it, of course it's going to make people afraid. But if we present it in a really balanced way, I think people will understand that this kind of technology, which might be scary because you don't understand it, can have really positive implications.
Yeah. All right, well, on that note, we will link to the story that we're talking about down below so you can actually do some more research and learn a little something.